Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Subtext Podcast Archives. These are the long-lost episodes of the Subtext that were originally produced between 2015 and 2017. In 2018, the Subtext moved to American Theater Magazine, and we've been producing the pod there monthly ever since. These time capsules are being shared here in their entirety, including plenty of outdated references and advertisements for events far in the past. If you enjoy them, please subscribe to the current podcast feed for the Subtext or stream new episodes on the website for American Theater Magazine. Thank you for listening.
This thing I'm about to say feels like I feel so privileged being able to even say this, but the truth is I suffer from anxiety. It's brought on by a number of things. Usually it's rejection. Oftentimes it's confrontation. I can't tell a friend if something they did bothered me. I can't tell my mother anything. I can't even tell the server in a restaurant that got my order wrong. I would rather squeeze past somebody on an elevator than ask them to move. It's all just too much for me. That doesn't mean I haven't been confrontational in my past. People who have known me for a while would describe me in a way that would give you the impression that I love confrontation. The truth is, I don't. The great conflict within me is that as much as I can't stand confrontation, I have an insatiable need to stand up for what feels right to me. These two things do battle inside me, and I lose no matter which side wins. The anxiety manifests in my chest. I feel simultaneously hollowed out and under immense pressure. I'm feeling it as I type this script, and I have to say as I'm reading it, because I'm supposed to be delivering these introductions, and I skipped the last one because I couldn't articulate what I had to say. I can't do that 2 months in a row, not because you really give a shit what I have to say before the interviews begin, but because I set a standard for myself. I decided I will do something a certain way, and I have to do it, or else the guilt and shame and anxiety roll in like a cement truck slowly burying me. These feelings overwhelm me at random times during the day, during random days of the week. It might be a rejection I received, making me feel like my playwriting career will amount to nothing. It might be because I received a parking ticket and I'm not sure if I'm going to have the extra money to pay for it this month. Why am I saying this? I'm whining. And what makes it worse is that I actually wrote all this down that I'm reading right now, and I'm reading it from a fucking script. How pathetic can a person get? I'm at a certain low point at the moment. Rejection season gets longer and longer every year. More people listen to this podcast than read the plays I write, yet I spend 100 times more hours writing than I do podcasting. Woe is me, right? I know. I've never felt more like Mark Maron than I do right now. What am I going to do about it? First, I'm going to shut up after I finish recording this. Then I'll go home, eat really unhealthy food, go to bed, and start over tomorrow. I'll carry on. Why do I bother? I don't know. Perhaps it's because I think having a purpose in life is the only thing that keeps a person sane, and playwriting is the closest thing I have to a purpose. And this podcast is part of it, I guess, at least on the periphery. Ugh, this feels like such a downer to start. A good thing the theme song is happy. Welcome to the Subtext. I am Brian James Polak, whiny playwright. I know that's redundant. This month I'm speaking with Carla Ching, playwright, TV writer, Kilroy, and author of the new play, The Two Kids That Blow Shit Up. But first, a word from our sponsor. The New Play Exchange is flipping the script on the ways playwrights and producers find each other. It's the world's largest cloud-based database of new scripts enhanced with robust search and filter tools, crowd-sourced recommendations of plays from industry professionals, a targeted opportunities module, and smart social networking. Sign up at newplayexchange.org and start exploring. All right, let's jump into my conversation with Carla Ching, author of The Two Kids That Blow Shit Up, produced by Artists at Play and opening in August at the Lounge Theater in Los Angeles. And the funny thing is, normally whenever I do these, especially here, the funny thing is, since we've been in Atwater, for some reason, and I don't even think I prompt it, we end up talking for like 5 minutes about traffic, everybody's journey, and it ends up being like playwrights across Los Angeles and their experiences in traffic before podcasting.
It is nuts though. Well, because I'm sure everybody arrives in a certain state of frazzled frenzy, fighting through traffic to get here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I feel like I've known you for like a couple years now, not for very long and not particularly well, which kind of excites me. Like I'm interested in getting to know you a little bit better, which is why you're here. But I remember I think you may have already been writing for television when I met you a couple years ago, because I scanned your bio and it said you were writing for something before Fear the Walking Dead. What show was that? So
I was on a USA show called Graceland, which was an undercover federal agent show.
Was that your first experience in television?
Totally first show.
And did you come to Los Angeles? Oh, you're from Los Angeles though, right?
I'm from here, but I was in New York for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And the only reason I came out is there's a guy that I was seeing and things were just starting to really happen. And he came out for pilot season. He said, "Don't worry, I'll be back. I'm sure I'll hate LA." And then he called me and he's like, "I think I really need to stay." And my heart was broken and I was like, ah. But we did long distance for a little while, and then I decided I might try to come out here because I was also interested in working in television, so why not give it a shot?
And so you did, and you got on Graceland?
Yes, but it was it took like a year. Like I put all my stuff in storage in case it didn't work out and I could go back. But I had a secretary out here for like a year before I was able to land that job. So
are you fully committed here?
I finally got my stuff from New York last year and put it on a truck and put it out here. So at least for the moment, I'm here. Yeah.
And where did you grow up exactly?
In the Valley.
In the Valley.
Encino. Yeah.
Encino.
Uh-huh.
Did you grow up thinking you'd work in the industry when you got older?
I didn't. It's weird because I know the industry was all around me, but it was also sort of far from me. I mean, my folks weren't in the industry. And so I liked theater is what I really got into in high school. So I thought that might be a part of my life, and that's what eventually drove me to New York. But I didn't ever think I would be a TV or film
What about
writer.
theater hooked you?
It's part of how I found my voice. I made myself go out for the high school play because I was terribly shy and had a really soft voice to the point that like teachers would tell me to speak up because they couldn't hear me, and I knew that if I went into the world that way, I'd be in trouble. So I wanted to face my fear of public speaking and speaking louder and speaking up and see if it might be more comfortable to speak in a voice that wasn't mine. So started getting into plays in high school and just really loved performing. But I was also a poet, so eventually that became doing spoken word and eventually taking those poems into performance. And
did it just happen for you? Did you start acting and performing and it just like, oh, I get it, this is me? Or was there like something unlocked in that I was like, it's a wonderful thing to be able to face your fear. It's a wonderful thing to be part of an ensemble and to tell a story. And I sort of loved the team of all of it, and that I had sort of a cliquey high school, but when it came to theater, we had people from all across the place, from all the different small little groups, and this was the one place that we could all coexist together and be happy and work together, and then we would go back to our different groups. But I was like, it's when it first occurred to me that it could be sort of a great equalizer and bring people with really disparate backgrounds and groups together, where we could understand each other, and then bring us into dialogue with audiences where we could further understand. I don't know. And were you aware of this at the time as a teenager?
I think so. I think that that's part of what got me hooked. And then, but the trouble was then I went to college and I didn't like the people there doing theater nearly so much because it was very sort of, that wasn't my experience. So I sort of fell out of doing it.
Was it cliquey?
It was super cliquey.
And you didn't feel part of the clique?
I did not. So, and I didn't like the folks, so I did film instead and discovered I was a terrible filmmaker. And so came out with a useless degree in film and a degree in English. I sort of, my minor was education. And I was like, well, I guess I'll be a teacher. So, and be a poet and sort of support my life that way in the city. So I had a long way around of sort of being a poet and then that driving me back into theater. I went in New York, there was a Pan-Asian performance group called Peeling.
Mm-hmm.
I was looking for community and I'm like, oh, well, that's where the Asian people are at. Let me go see what they do. And they did like autobiographical theater that was like sort of performance arty. And I'm like, oh, well, I sort of perform.
And your poetry, being a poet, so that was sort of like your connection to that.
Yeah.
That's what drove you there.
And that drove me there, and then the pieces I did started to become more and more performative, and instead of just me, there would be other people in them, and I'm like, oh, theater.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm writing theater, and so in the doing of that and working in short form, I realized I wanted to write full-length plays, and I didn't have the tools, so I went back to school.
How much time passed between undergrad and going to grad school?
A while. I was, I think, 28 when I went back to grad school. So, a bunch of kids.
Right.
Like I was one of the older ones. There were all these babies there. And I guess what makes you single-minded about getting as much as you can when you go back to school, when you're paying for it, is that, you're like, I'm here and I'm making sacrifices to be here. So I'm going to fucking.
Oh, yeah. I mean, when I went to grad school at 37.
Oh, wow.
So
yeah. So,
I was, I was a terrible undergrad. I went to undergrad when everybody goes. I was 18 and I was just a terrible student. And I just got through 4 years of undergrad with a useless degree in philosophy. But by the time I got to grad school, I'm 37 years old, and I said to myself, I'm going to every fucking class.
Yes.
I'm doing every assignment. I'm participating in every single thing because I'm paying for it.
Right.
And it's like a whole series of opportunities. That's what class was not an opportunity for anything as a teenager. But as an adult, it was like, oh, I can meet somebody. I can figure something out. I can uncover a thing. It was kind of like this juicy endeavor rather than kind of a waste of time between meals.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I think that that's where we're doing it all wrong in American education. Being a former teacher, I think that students get most engaged when, you feel like you're driving.
Yeah.
This is my learning experience. This is what I want to know. This is, then it's not a chore.
And you were teaching in New York?
I was a high school English teacher and a middle school teacher for a while, and that's how I supported myself as a playwright and as a poet. So it was great and hard. Some of the hardest stuff I've done, but some of the best stuff.
So hard how?
Was it hard in different ways in different schools? My first school was junior high school 117 in East Harlem, and so a lot of my students were economically disadvantaged, and when you have parents that drop out and you're living with grandma and then mom pops in today after being gone for a month, it's going to be hard to focus on school.
Mm-hmm.
So stuff like that. And then the last school I was at Hunter College High School, which was like the smarty pants kids, but like we taught them on a college level, which also meant that I was working on a college level. And so there's almost no time to write.
Yeah.
So it was one of the best jobs I've ever had in my life and one of the most fulfilling, but I came to a crossroads where I'm like, if I want to be a writer, I don't know if I can stay at this wonderful, wonderful job.
So you weren't thinking, I want to be a educator for a career?
I was pretty sure that maybe it's my parents who convinced me that you never make money as a writer, which as a playwright is true.
Right.
So you have to have your survival job. And so teaching was going to be my survival job. And it was for a long time. And then, I just had to quit that job to go back to school. So I'm like, I'm like, I need to at least find out if I can be a playwright.
Mm-hmm.
I need to try. And I'll go back to school to do that, and then I'll figure it out on the other side.
What were you writing about before you went to grad school? Like, what was your poetry about?
A lot of it was about the messed up stuff that happens to you on the streets of New York, honestly. Like, there's so much fodder, and about the little cruelnesses we, dole out to each other without meaning to.
Were you experiencing it or witnessing it?
Both. Which is, I think, the incredibly rich and wonderful thing about New York City is that you are in this huge quilt of stories all the time. Like, you are assailed by stories. In a way, you have to go inside sometimes to get away from them because there's so many, and many wonderful and many terrible. So, yeah. And, I started experimenting with form and stuff. But then the reason I left poetry is because I realized I was tired of the sound of my own voice. And I preferred to write through other characters.
Mm-hmm. And when you first started writing drama, you were performing in your plays?
In those little things in Peeling, yes. But then when I started writing full lengths, no, I stopped performing. Because I realized, too, I was an adequate actor, but I wasn't a great actor. And I was definitely limited. And as an Asian American woman, the parts that were available were just so few. And there are actors that are better than me, so if I wanted to do theater, I'd probably have a better shot being a writer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So were your plays about similar subject matter as your poems?
They have run they've run the gamut. I mean, they've been about all kinds of things. I mean, they tend to come from a question of, why do people do what they do to each other? I know that's really general, and we sort of all write about that, but why are we so mean to people that we love? Why do we lie? Why are parents so hard on their kids? I'll often start with a very simple question to fuel a play. It has to be something that makes me angry enough that, I can stick with that question for the 1.5 to 2 to 3 to 4 years that it takes to write the play. And hopefully in the writing of it, I answer the question for myself.
So did you feel like somebody you loved treated you horribly, and that's what triggered this question of why do we treat people we love horribly?
I guess so. Like one of my first plays, my grad school play. We all have the plays that we write in grad school, right? I think one of my grad school plays was about relationships, and because I had spent a long time being a serial monogamist, and I always screwed them up. So my question was, even when you love people, why do you screw up your relationships? And I wanted to understand that so I could stop doing it.
Did you unlock something?
I did for myself.
It's funny hearing that being a serial monogamist led to trouble, because usually it's the other way around.
This is like being a serial cheater, running around her.
Yeah.
I think what I realized through the writing of that play is that, and it's such a simple thing, and I guess maybe many people came to it sooner than I did in my late 20s, but was that, just because you fall in love with someone doesn't mean you will stop desiring. Stop desiring other people, finding other people attractive. It doesn't mean you should run after them. This relationship that you committed to, that's where but there will be enticements out there. And I think that there was a lot of me that's like, ooh, bright new shiny thing must mean if my heart feels this way now that I have to chase after the shiny thing.
Right.
Instead of staying where something was completely beautiful and fine. It's like just being able to realize, infatuation versus love, and that being loved doesn't mean that other things don't turn you on, I guess. It took me a long time to figure that out.
Did you figure that out in that play,
in the
or
writing
did it take
of the play, I think it helped me figure out, at least intellectually. Then you got to go live it, right? But but I was like, oh, geez, that's it. So I'm, for no other reason, that play's never seen the light of day, but.
But you needed to write it.
I did need to write it. I mean, that's why we write plays, right? I mean, you write a play because you have to. That's the only way you can finish it, kind of, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, it has to matter to you. It has to be a thing that's important, and you're not thinking in the moment, oh, it's okay if this never gets done. Like, we want every single thing we're writing while we're writing it to have a life of some kind. But then you look back later and you're like, oh, thank God nobody saw that play.
I know. It was an imperfect grad school play, but I learned from writing it.
Mm-hmm.
We get better with every one that we do, right? Hopefully.
The things you come to writing after grad school, do you come to subject differently than you did before? Or the same sort of things pop for you?
I guess sometimes now I've been pushed in the direction of, like, I used to always start with character. I mean, I guess I still sort of do, but sometimes it's a larger question. Or sometimes I've been lucky enough to get a commission, and I'm like, then you do the mental math of, oh, okay, this is sort of needs to have an element of science to it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I want there to be Asian American characters, or in this other one, oh, this play needs to be about an aspect of Orange County. What is interesting enough to me to wrestle with?
Mm-hmm.
And with my last one, sometimes I'll just be reading an article, like this new play that I'm working on. I was reading an article about a woman whose boyfriend posted a lot of naked pictures of her on Facebook and then tagged all her friends and family. It struck me as a really cruel thing, but she sort of took her life back and her image back and her body back by doing her own. She got a photographer and did her own naked pictures, sort of reclaimed herself. So my what if on that, my slight spin on that is, what if it weren't this attractive 26-year-old woman, but what if it were a woman that were 46 and had a family and a career and things to lose? Because I'm also interested in talking about sexuality of women over 40.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're here and we still exist and we still have desires and urges, but we're never written about, we're never talked about. So that was something that I wanted to get into. So in that way, I guess that one came more idea first.
But you still find a way to put yourself in the play.
Yeah.
Do you come to your plays in that way where you think about, where am I in this play?
I guess so. I mean, I guess the way that I was taught at the time, it was the new school at the time, it was Actor Studio Drama School. They really sort of taught us that you have to come at things from the inside.
Mm-hmm.
So there has to be, pieces of you in the play, or you have to be able to find your way in.
Mm-hmm.
So how about for you?
Yeah, I was actually just having this conversation with a dramaturg the other day, because I wrote a play that the jumping off point was me reconciling with my father who died. I hadn't seen him since I was 10.
Oh, wow.
And he died when I was in my mid to late 30s. So that reconciliation never happened. So I started to explore dramatizing that. And then in the dramatizing of that, I learned I don't know anything about him, so I don't know how to dramatize him. So then I don't know how to dramatize me with him. And so I ended up creating a work of fiction. But the way I found myself in it was that I kept implanting truth. So the things that are being talked about, I'm putting in fictional characters, but they're speaking my actual truth. And sometimes I'm speaking to myself. You know, both characters are me trying to overcome some conflict of sorts. Yeah.
That's really cool.
What about you?
I don't think none of them ever actually speak for me or speak in place of me. But in terms of, yes, I'm always looking for truth.
Mm-hmm.
Their truth, the best that I can find it, and something that resonates personally for me is true, if that makes any sense.
What's your relationship to, say, place?
Place is kind of huge for me. It's sort of actually weird. The play that I'm working on right now with Artists at Play, called The Two Kids That Blow Shit Up, takes place in New York, but I'm working on it here in LA. And it's so many of my plays took place in New York because I lived there for so long, and it was home, and the city was a character for me. And that's the case with this play too. And so in a way, it's weird for me to be living in Los Angeles now, writing plays. My last play I wrote takes place in Orange County, and this next one will probably take place in LA. But I'm like having to learn to understand Los Angeles as a character now. Like, I know New York is a character so well, and I miss her terribly. But yeah, having to get to know, getting reacquainted with LA, because my adult relationship with LA is so different than my kid relationship. So
what I've noticed about Los Angeles is because it's so diverse, and I don't mean ethnically, not just ethnically, but I mean geographically speaking, that you could be writing about Santa Monica on the east side, and you might as well be writing about New York.
Yes.
You know?
No, and it's crazy how my boyfriend took me on a staycation a couple weeks ago. We didn't have a lot of time, but he's like, let's go to Venice. We'll just get an Airbnb. And we stayed at this surfer's pad in Venice, and it was, I'd been to Venice a lot as a kid. My friend Teresa and I would go there and hang out, but like to just like actually park it there for about 2.5 days, it's just a completely different corner of the world, different vibe.
Right, yeah.
Different weather, different feeling you have when you wake up in the morning and you go to sleep, when you hear the ocean roaring in the background. It made me want to like spend real time exploring all the neighborhoods of LA.
Yeah, I had that thought driving from to and from Manhattan Beach from the east side.
Yes.
And I kept remarking about, I'm still technically in this same city. Like, people living in these areas I'm driving through, well, most of them will say I live in Los Angeles, and I'll say I live in Los Angeles, but it couldn't be more different.
Yes.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. But yet I feel like in New York has the boroughs, but New York still feels like New York. If you're writing about the Bronx or Brooklyn or Queens, it's still to the world New York, you know?
To the world New York. Although, to be fair, like my job after grad school, I was a teaching artist, and so I've literally been to just about every subway stop in New York, going and teaching in different public schools. And, Rockaway Beach is radically different than, Washington Heights is radically different than, Coney Island. Like, I appreciated, Jamaica Queens, Jackson Heights, like getting to visit all those neighborhoods and experience the different communities. I was a really wonderful thing. And there's more of a unifying vibe there, but also I became aware of how much we don't encounter each other as much as we think we do in New York. And in LA, it's like way worse, right? Because we don't have to ride public transportation. So
yeah, but then I came to LA from many years in Boston, and I feel like I will speak for myself. I felt like I was part of the city, part of the fabric of the city, because I was on public transportation.
Right.
Like, I thought my relationship was stronger with the city because of it. And I feel that way when I'm in New York. I want to take the subway in New York for some reason. Like, I feel like I want to be part of it. And it's sort of like you are in the veins. These are the veins of the city, and you're part of it. And then our veins in Los Angeles are on the surface because you're in a car and you're on a road. And I feel like I'm never really in LA when I'm in a car, despite the fact that that's one of the definitive characteristics of Los Angeles.
But we can see it all, which I think is interesting.
Yeah.
Like, versus in New York, if you're underground on the subway and you just pop up, like, it's all a different myriad of like weird pop-ups to you, like little bubbles that are like, if you were to ride through them continuously in a car, like piecing together how all those are connected is kind of,
and how they slowly morph from one to the next over the period of blocks. Yeah. It's interesting talking to you about LA and New York, because you seem just watching you talk, it seems like New York is home. Like that's what it looks like when just looking at you talk, and
That's so funny.
yet this is your technical
home.
Yeah.
Like I'm a full-on New Yorker that has vocal fry because that's how I learned to talk growing up at the back of my throat, which you're not supposed to. That is so Southern California. But yeah, I mean, I came of age. I became a person in New York and lived there for so long. You know, that was the place of all my stories, and all my memories as an adult are really there. I came here and had to start making new memories as an adult, and it was very weird. No, there's something really, the ethos of New York, and, you know, the New York theater community is so fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
There's a wonderful theatrical community here, too. But
How long have you been in LA now? Back in LA?
almost, I'm not quite 4 years, I think.
Are you feeling like you're connecting to a sense of community?
I am, for the folks that are here, which is cool. And then also so many people keep coming from New York that it almost feels like little New York now.
Yeah.
So many playwrights and actors feel like they're coming out. How about for you? How long have you been here?
I'll have been here 9 years in August.
Oh, wow. Does it feel like home, or?
It does. Oh, yes and no. I mean, I'm in a bit of a transition right now, relationship-wise and living-wise, and so it's kind of changing my experience of living in LA. But you know, I moved here in 2007, and I lived here for several years before I decided that I wanted to go to grad school. But one of the first things I did when I moved here was find my way into the theater community, or figure out what the theater community was, because I came at a time when I was in my early 30s, and I had learned over the years in Boston that theater was the thing I kind of wanted. Came here to be a writer and explored film and television, but because I got a job at the theater at Boston Court, and connected to the theater community, that it's sort of like theater was like the light bulbs going off above my head. And it's weird coming to LA and learning to love theater, because that's usually not what happens to people. You know, you find your love in another city and you carry it with you here. But I discovered it when I was here, and it drove me to go to grad school for playwriting, and I went to USC.
Oh, nice.
And coming out of USC, you know, USC has such a great cinema school, and I took a lot of classes there, that you come out of there really well-rounded as a dramatic writer. Like I was ready to write for film and television.
Wow.
And felt very comfortable in that genre. And
That's huge.
but I have zero drive for it. I just want to write plays. I want to be a poor, starving playwright the rest of my life. It's kind of weird. Myself 15 years ago would never understand who I am today.
No, I think that's an admirable and wonderful and really hard thing to do.
But it takes it was such a relief, because I mean, you've worked in television for several years now. It's probably great when you're on a show, but then you're like, what am I
doing the rest of the time?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it can be a grind when you're in a show, like a real hard grind. So, you know, you have to be careful that you make room for your theatrical life. You know,
which has that been hard for you?
I've been lucky enough that it hasn't been hard. I've been able to have projects going outside the TV work, so that I'm, you know, always rolling with it. But it does mean sometimes when I come to work, I'm tired. But no, I've been trying to balance both. Initially, it was hard keeping the brain for both. I can split my brain now. When I initially started, the TV writing was making my plays bad, and my plays were making my TV writing bad. But I learned how to sort of split my brain so that I can try to do both.
I'm seeing that the players I'm talking to, who, like, for example, Sheila Callahan, has seemed like you to be able to balance the two really well. But then there are other playwrights I've talked to here and not recording a podcast who seem to find what really drives them, and they'll get into television, and that ends up being the thing that they really want to do. And maybe in 15 years they're going to be like, oh, that old mistress playwriting of mine, I'd love to come back to her, you know. But I was always very afraid of that, and that's one of the reasons why I decided decided at this point not to pursue film and television, because I didn't feel like I was a strong playwright yet. Like, perhaps I haven't found my voice yet, and perhaps I haven't cultivated some semblance of a career yet. And what happens to this thing that I care about if I, divide its time for another thing that I'm not quite,
No, I feel you, and that is sort of that I sort of totally did the same thing. I'm like, I devoted myself to playwriting for a long time because I'm like, it's too hard. Like, I need to understand this beast before I can even attempt any other beast. So, because it is such a weird, wild, woolly, like, wonderful thing, but frustrating and hard and not formulaic and yeah.
I think I want to make sure before, we still have plenty of time left, but I want to make sure that we spend some time talking about, you mentioned it earlier, the two kids that blow shit up. And so give me a little pitch on that.
So the two kids that blow shit up is about Max and Diana, who are two Asian American kids who meet. Am I allowed to curse on this? I am.
Oh, yeah. Fuck yeah.
You just said shit. Fuck yeah. So they meet when their parents are fucking when they're 9 years old. So they are, while their parents are in the house fucking, they're basically on a play date outside. And so it's about their ensuing relationship as their parents break up and get back together and get married and get divorced and all the crazy travails, how they start to become friends and then eventually more than friends. So it's sort of asking questions of what is friendship, what is family, who do we care about? Who do we carry with us throughout our lives? How do our relationships change? What is the shape of a 30-year relationship?
Mm-hmm. How did you come upon that?
It was a couple of things. I mean, I was interested in the idea of writing a two-hander for Asian Americans because we don't get to play shit like that. I mean, we don't get to do something with breadth and depth where you get to play from 9 to 38. It never happens. I first built the play at the Lark Play Development Center in New York has they take a bunch of playwrights, they kidnap them, they take them upstate to Vassar, New York Stage and Film's like residency thing, and they're like, work on whatever you want to. And the year that I happened to go, there's some awesome playwrights there, like Chris Pena and Ray Pamatmat and Chisa Hutchinson, and most of us decided to build, Zell Williams, build something from scratch, like scratch. So, and it's only was like a 5-6 day long residency. So people were like up all night writing pages. So the thing that I could think to do in that time, I'm like, let me try to do a two-hander. Let me try to do a relationship story, the story of these two people over time. And every day I will bring in a chapter or a scene from their youth and a scene from them older, and sort of maybe try working outwards in, like towards basically the center at the end. And so that was my crazy, really fast first draft of the play. And I'm like, oh, this might be something. These people over time, and it moved backwards and forwards in time. They're 38, they're 9, they're 27, they're 14. It was sort of how I built it. And then it was in a drawer for a really long time. Until Artists at Play asked me to do a workshop of it last year. We took it.
Did they ask for that play specifically?
They said, have a play.
Yeah.
And it happened to be the play that I had kicking around that wasn't obligated to anybody. And I'm like, oh, maybe I never thought anybody would do it, but maybe this little two-hander would be fun to work on if they'll have me. And they're like, yeah, let's work on it.
Side note, I went to the Vassar retreat with the Lark in 2014.
Nice.
And it was a really intimidating experience for me because the reason I got in was because I won a Kennedy Center Award in grad school.
Congratulations.
The Lark didn't know me and I didn't know any of the other playwrights,
Oh.
it was like, here are a bunch of playwrights.
Go.
And then there's Brian.
Who were you there with?
I was with Rajiv Joseph,
Yeah.
and Lucy
Oh, God,
Thurber,
yes.
Matthew Paul Olmos,
Yes.
Crystal Skillman,
Oh my God.
and me.
Greatest group ever. What a wonderful.
Oh yeah, it was an
group.
amazing group, but I was so scared. You know, my dorm room is like adjacent to Rajiv Joseph's dorm room, and I was like, what am I doing here? I had this experience of I don't belong here, and it took a couple days before, because that whole crew and Andrea and John Eisner from the Lark are just so lovely and amazing that nobody was ostracizing me. It was all my own psychological bullshit. But it was amazing. That was my first time. I had just graduated from grad school like a month and a half earlier.
Oh, wow.
And it was really, in my entire life, the first time I had 5 or 6 days dedicated only to the thing I'm writing, because through grad school I kept a full-time job the entire time and I never had any dedicated writing time like that. So it was kind of amazing. Shout out to the Lark.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
And, I think it's funny that you say that. I think I remember thinking the exact same thing, looking out the window of my dorm room. I'm just a playwright. I'm only a playwright for the next 5-6 days.
Yeah.
And it was a beautiful thing, because otherwise, I always had 6 jobs.
Yeah.
And so just to be just a playwright.
Oh, and it's Schenectady in July,
Yep.
and it was so nice, and it was, New York Stage and Film is there, but it still felt so calm and quiet. I want to go back.
I know.
I should write Andrea an email.
Yeah, you should. I want to go back. I wanna go back.
Okay, anyway, digression, back to your play.
Oh, no. So we played with it last year, which was really great. Learned some stuff. It was, long story short, it was a non-chronological play, because I told you I built it in that weird way.
Right.
And then as an experiment, we put it in order.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, this is great. And I sort of thought maybe it played better that way. But as we've gone into production, I've gone back to released
Breaking the narrative.
breaking the narrative.
Yeah.
My really smart dramaturg, Andy Knight, was sort of like, don't you want the structure of the play to mirror the title, and do you want it to be a memory play? I'm like, no, I really don't. He's like, it will probably accumulate more and feel more like a life
Yeah.
if it's out of order.
Yeah.
So we have been messing around with the order a lot, trying to find the right order, the right alchemy of scenes. So.
That's great. Andy's super smart. I like him a lot.
Yeah.
And so are you done writing the play? Are you still playing with it?
We're still playing.
Because you
we're
open
still
in a couple
tweaking.
weeks,
I know,
right?
we do. I think we've locked the order now, as of like 2 days ago. But thanks to a great idea, I thought I had the order, and then Andy's like, "What if?" I'm like, "You're right." So I think the order's locked now, but I'm still.
And where is
tweaking.
Jeremy, your director? Jeremy Lelliot's your director.
Do you guys know each other?
Yeah, we do.
From around the place.
Yeah.
He's absolutely wonderful.
But is he on board with you, like deconstructing, reconstructing, blowing shit up?
He totally is. He's totally game, and it was wonderful because the minute we did it, he'd been having an issue with one of the transitions anyway. But he's like, "Don't worry, we'll get to it." But when we made the change, he's like, "Oh, that takes care of my other issue." And then he came in the next day, and his eyes were all bright. He's like, "It's so much better," So he's been totally enthusiastic and on board with, I don't know, however we try to improve it and stuff. So yeah.
Well, I'm excited to see it.
Oh, thanks.
I'm really curious about, you were talking earlier about writing characters and how, for example, when you were an actor and there's just not a lot of opportunity for Asian female performers, and there are people who are just doing it better than you, right? Do you feel like I'm an Asian playwright, Asian American playwright? Do you feel like that you have to wear this sort of moniker on yourself and then write in that way, or have you felt that from the outside?
I do feel that from the outside, but I also claim it because here's the thing. I feel like I have a responsibility to all the other wonderful Asian American artists out there, and just a responsibility to the world to put people that look like me, people that I've known on stage, and to create opportunities for Asian American directors and actors. Like, I actually think that that's part of my job. I know that there are plenty of other Asian American playwrights who don't see it that way, and that's absolutely fine, and that's their total right. But I think I have to do it, because if I don't build them, then who's going to do it? And it's probably also influenced by the fact my partner is an Asian American actor, and I see he's lucky enough to be working and to work fairly often, but still I see what he has to struggle against, and I see the kinds of parts that he gets handed, and I think it's a travesty, because he's way more talented and he has way more breadth and depth than the kinds of things that he's ever allowed to do. So yes, it made me very happy when artists at Play said that they wanted to do it. Not even so much for me, but I'm like, oh, how great. A good friend of mine, Nelson Lee, is going to be playing Max. And I was like, oh, great. Everybody will see what Nelson can do. And same with Julia Cho, who's in it. Beautiful actor, and everybody will be able to see really the wide range of what she can do. It makes me happy. In terms of content-wise, I think, I am not an identity play writer. That's sort of not my jam. I think that that's kind of been done, but it's not that ethnicity or identity aren't a part of the characters' lives that I write. It's just that it's not the primary thing that I'm writing about, if that makes any sense at all.
Give me a for example. So with the two kids that blow shit up, talk about their identity.
So, for instance, Diana is Chinese American and Max is Korean American, and they have a little scene where they talk about being pissed off about going to Chinese school because they hate it. And Diana says it's just because Dad's a cheapo and he wants to have one place to send us once a week that we're out of their hair over the weekend, and it's cheaper than a movie or a babysitter. And Max says, well, he also just wants us to go one place a week where we belong. So I'm trying to talk about what it is to be, there are moments where it's like what it is to be, to stand in my shoes, perhaps for a second. But I also hope that maybe there's some universal stuff there too. If that makes sense. If the characters don't apologize for being who they are, they also don't not talk about who they are.
Right. I struggle sometimes in engaging in a conversation on this topic because I feel like I don't even know how to ask the question.
I think you just asked in a really great way.
Without sounding like I don't know, like insensitive or just like I'm curious and don't want my curiosity to.
I think you just asked in a really great way, and I think it is something that a lot of Asian American writers are talking about. I think it's something that even artistic directors are talking about, Ralph Pena of the Mighty Theater Company, Mighty Writers Lab. I mean, one nice thing when I was in Mighty is he always said, I want you guys to write what you want to write. You don't have to feel like you have to write about a certain thing. Just write great plays. I think he had said at the time that we all sort of wrote post-identity, which I think is mostly true, but he never prescribed. The last time I think I felt prescribed that I had to write Asian American shit, or what people's idea of Asian American shit was in graduate school. I had many plays that I wanted to write, but of course the one that my grad school teacher wanted to be my thesis was a short play I'd written called Yellow Girl. So, of course, she wanted that to be none of the other plays that I'd written about all different kinds of people. She wanted this semi-autobiographical one that was squarely rooted in identity, which I've found, like a lot of people that I know, Asian American people that have gone to grad school, writers of color, that we get forced into that, like,
Why?
box. I think because the teachers think that perhaps that's how we'll break through. That's how we'll distinguish ourselves. It's not just good enough to be a good writer. It's like we have to be that ethnic writer or that writer that writes about themselves. I don't know. It always puzzled
Because your
and
name's
baffled me.
Carla Ching,
Right.
and because your name's Carla Ching, your play should probably, the expectation is when we crack this play open.
Right. It'll be overtly Asian, or what people's idea of Asian is, as opposed to if I were Fred Smith, when then there would be no expectation that I could write about anything that I wanted in the whole wide world. So, I mean, it's still something that I think probably all writers struggle with. Everybody wants to put you in a box. I think no matter what, they want to understand how they can pitch you, who you are, what your deal is. And so I guess our job, right, is to be able to take that back and tell them who we are. By definition.
Are you experiencing that with, say, commissions?
I have been lucky enough in that the 2 commissions that I have ever gotten, there were other parameters on them. Like, again, one was an EST Sloan commission, so it had to be a science play. And the other one was you have to sort of write about Orange County. But otherwise, they really gave me free rein, and there was an expectation within that I write about anything in particular. I ended up in both of them going after material that I guess people would say is Asian American. Like one of them, Fast Company. I wanted to use it as an opportunity to write about an Asian American family because I'd never gotten to do it. Even though I knew it'd be dangerous because it was an all Asian cast, I did it anyway. And then the other one, I did use it to explore both motel kids and parachute kids. Parachute kids is predominantly an Asian phenomenon, where families from parts of Asia, China, Hong Kong, Korea send their kids here to get an education, put the kid in a house, send them money every month, give them a car, but parent has to go back to the home country and work. I sought that out because it was interesting to me. That is a phenomenon in Orange County. I wasn't asked to write about something Asian in Orange County. I sought that out myself, but...
And the motel kids, I think I saw a documentary by Pelosi.
Yes.
What's her first? I can't remember her first name. About the motel kids outside of Disney. That was
heartbreaking.
Freaking heartbreaking.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable. Yeah. That's what you mean by motel kids?
That is what I mean. And so I wanted to write a play where I crashed the world of motel kids into the world of parachute kids, and see what might happen if 2 kids met who one had no family and seemingly everything, and one had
family but nothing.
yes.
Yeah.
And what might happen to them if they came into each other's orbits.
What happens to them?
You'll have to see, Brian. No, but I mean,
What's the title of that one?
It's called Nomad Motel.
Okay.
And they sort of, because their parents are super absent, which I guess is a theme in my work, their parents are super absent, so they sort of make this makeshift kind of family. And learn to depend on each other because they can't really depend on anybody else. So they sort of make a makeshift home. Yeah.
Something that I was just thinking of, because I wasn't paying any attention to what you're saying. Just kidding. I don't know if this is my awareness or the fact that the world is changing for the better, but is it that more Asian American playwrights and plays are getting out into the world, or is it that my awareness of them is just...
I think that they're just getting out there. They've been there for a while. Like, I know, I should sit down sometime and count on all my hands how many but I probably know like 30 myself, 30, 35.
But from when you started out, say when you started writing plays and started to realize who you were and how the world sees who you are, to today, do you feel like the American theater is more welcoming, is broadening?
I do, and I there was a time that David Henry Hwang and Sung No and Julia Cho were it. I mean, and David is, I think of as a different generation from Sung and Julia, but I think that there was the old guard, and then there were these new rising stars, and then that was sort of it. And then I think with the generation that I was lucky enough to come up with, like, are going nuts, like Ray Pamatmat and Mike Liu and Rahana Mirza and Susan Stanton and and then now the other newcomers like Hansel Jung and Ji-Hae Park and Kimberly, like it's like there's an explosion, I think, which is fantastic. And part of it, I think, has to do with an appetite for the work, and the other has to do for the companies that have been doing it forever, that provide a laboratory and a place for these folks to work, so they don't lose heart, and they bring each other up. Like, I still think the My Writers Lab is one of the greatest places in the world, and they house most of these people that I was just talking about. They have a roster of like 30 people, but where you can bring work every week and feel supported and tell stories about the crazy notes that you got from the people that you're developing the play with that don't understand it at all. It's I'm sure this is really easy to get disheartened doing this, especially as a playwright. You work so often alone before you get a chance to workshop and to get to a place to bring in pages, but also to be able to tell your stories and to, tell each other about the crazy shit that happens in order to make the work live is so huge. So I think that, that's such a big part of it. Because you need little wins along the way, I think, to keep going. It's so important, and it feels like there are more and more opportunities, I think, for folks now than before. Like, things like the Ignition Festival are great. Even I used to artistic direct this little Asian American theater company in New York called 2G. I was like, can we just create opportunities for people so they can get some wins this year? So I started this thing called the Jumpstart Commission. So I didn't have a lot of money, but I'm like, we'll give people, I can't remember if it was $500 or $1,000 to start a new play. If you can just start it in the next 6 months, start it, bring what you have, we'll workshop it, and you can see it before an audience. Just to give people the impetus to start and then to keep going.
I like calling them wins because it's such a motivator. I talk a lot about rejection season, and rejection season really is almost all year round now.
Yeah.
And sometimes it just takes one little win to keep you going.
And I know I was talking to my boyfriend yesterday about this. There's so many times I almost was like, maybe I need to put this down for a while. I don't know about you, but I was just like, it gets exhausting sometimes. You're having to work a lot, and you're trying to do this work too, and you're just like, is anybody listening? Does anybody care? Should I put this down for a little while and see if life has something else in store for me? And every time I was about to do that, I got a small win. That I'm like, oh, I guess I have to keep going.
How do you measure success?
Success. How do any of us measure success? I mean,
how do you measure success?
Me, I.
Do you feel like, and this is a trite way to say it, but that you've made it?
No, I'm just trying to be a working girl like everybody else.
What would that mean to you?
I mean, I think all of us are only as good as what we're working on right now. I do, and I don't think I even look at it as success. It's just like, I want to be working, and I want to be making good work, and hope that it affects people. And if that is happening, then maybe I'll feel good. I don't know if I look at that as success. I mean, because it's art, I guess. How do you quantify success? But for me, I guess it's just, are we lucky enough to continue to get to do it? that's a win. If you get to do, if you get to do it at all, it's a happy day.
I think it's a good spot to end on. Thank you for doing this.
No, thank you.
All right. Awesome. That was great.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.
What do you call success?
I'm so far from it. I don't even know how to identify it.
But for you, what does it mean?
Yeah, I guess stringing together enough wins to keep the doldrums away would do it. But one of the things, and we ended up not talking about this, but that's been changing me as a human being and as a playwright is the advocacy I've been watching happen over the past few years, particularly with the Kilroys. The Kilroys is what really sort of like blew my mind open to advocacy, and then being friendly with like Joy and Kelly and having lots of conversations with them, that I'm starting to measure my own success by who I'm able to help
yes,
up.
Absolutely.
Like if I can, I'm always trying to send plays around. Like, oh, that person has a play. I know they're looking for that kind of thing, and they're making these connections. If that works, that's a win for me.
Yes.
And that, even though my art has nothing to do with that, that's a huge thing for me.
No, yes.
And so I have like my own artistic success, like are people being inspired and wanting to know more of my work and do something with it? And then am I able to do that with other people? I think I need the balance of both of these things. Like if only one of those was happening, I wouldn't feel completely, like if my plays were getting produced, I'd still feel lacking. And if I was getting other plays produced, I would still feel like I'm lacking. So I guess my success is measured somewhere in there.
That's amazing.
Thank you, Carla Ching. Go see her play, The Two Kids That Blow Shit Up, August 18th through September 11th at the Lounge Theater in LA. I say go see anything Carla writes, and go see anything artists at Play produce. On to the thank yous. Thank you to Bill Bordy for funding At This Stage magazine. Thank you to LA Stage Alliance and Danny Oliver for making the Subtext real. Thank you to David at JTB Recording Studio for recording this podcast. Thank you to International Pen Pal for the theme music. Thank you for following us on Twitter at Subtext Podcast. And thank you for emailing us with anything you might have to say at thesubtextpodcast@gmail.com. Here we are at the end of another one. Who listens all the way to the end of this? Tweet me and I'll send you a picture of my dog.